Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode. We have a very special guest, Josh Trujillo, currently writing Blue Beetle over at DC Comics. Josh, would you like to tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Josh Trujillo. I'm a writer, comic book guy, video game guy. I write for Blue Beetle right now. I've written for Rick and Morty, Adventure Time, Captain America, Superman, all the Trinity, and just kind of odds and ends, self-published stuff and indie books and history, and so a little bit of everything. But right now it's about Jaime.
Yeah, we're gonna get into some of that other stuff. There's some dodgeball questions I want to talk about.
Yes.
So, uh, but before we do any of that stuff, that'll be our main part of the show. For now, we're gonna talk about all the stuff we've been watching, reading, playing, all the stuff from the week. So I'm gonna throw it back to our guest, Josh. Is there anything you've been reading, watching, anything exciting?
I don't know if it's exciting, but I'm a little groggy because I went to the late showing of MadameWeb last night.
I'm so glad you brought it up because I saw your tweet and I was gonna ask about it anyway. So
Yeah, I saw it. I was lucky enough to see it at the press screening. I had an in, and so I was there at the beginning of MadameWeb Mania, and last night was the last IMAX showing in LA, and so I was at the end. I feel like I was at the beginning and the end of MadameWeb, but that it's just camp. It's just so funny and campy, and like I don't think it's intentional, but you can't really tell sometimes. It's a special movie.
I agree. I agree. I think there's definitely some aspect. I understand why people say it's a bad movie because it's kind of badly put together, like
Yeah.
on the technical sense. But I had a fun time while I was watching that. Like just the cast, the nonsense dialogue that they kind of have to say just to kind of justify everything that's going on. All the little teases of like, hey, you know that character that we can't use.
But did either of you like laugh out loud at any moment that was not supposed to be funny?
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, for sure.
Okay.
A lot of that.
All right.
All right.
Now
Then I'll
here's
walk.
my question, because we have Craven still to come out. Now, if they were to do like one of those marathon movie things where they show all the Sony movies together and just end it with Craven, would you go to one of those?
I haven't seen Morbius, so maybe I guess. Craven's. We'll see, man. Those Venom movies are fun for me. I like them. So like, if Craven's like that, that's fine for me. But I guess we'll see.
My favorite thing about Morbius was watching Matt Smith kind of have a blast in that movie.
Yes.
So I think there's some stuff. Like I said, I don't think those are good movies, but I grew up watching those, or like early 2000s superhero films that maybe don't really hold up, but I was just like, yeah, superheroes on screen, let's go.
Yeah, it's the movie's set in 2003.
Yeah.
Which is like that's weird because that's when I graduated high school. So it's like it's very specific and like it feels like it, I'll say. So like it's such a weird movie, man. I don't know. People were applauding at the weirdest parts, and like everyone was there to kind of laugh with it, and like except for I'm sure there were people who genuinely thought they were going to get like a very serious superhero action movie, and then they got what's kind of like a little more like Elektra or Daredevil meets like Final Destination. Like if your headspace is like there, it's kind of a horror movie. Like I don't know. I had a good time. I'll probably watch it again, honestly.
Could there be a director's cut that could make it better?
I wish.
They should just put out all the footage that they shot for that film and let us judge. Like we'll just base it off of that. Don't even piece it together. There's a sequence with a Britney Spears song that I was just like, is this really happening? And it's great. Like I said, I had a fun time. When I saw you were going again, Josh, I was like, man, maybe I should go again before they take it off of the theaters.
You better hurry.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Will this be the movie that makes it to the streaming service fastest?
The only problem is that it's gonna go to Stars, that no one has Stars because it's a Sony film.
Oh.
Yeah, so they all stop there first, and then they go out to like whatever other services Sony wants.
I think I saw that Morbius is about to hit Disney Plus.
That's crazy.
That's funny.
Time to get your Matt Smith dance on.
Yeah.
I wonder. I know they removed the scene at the end with the vulture, so like I wonder if they'll put it back for Disney release, since that's a character they showed.
With this kind of setup, I'm real curious because I would love to see this kind of mashup in Secret Wars, where we have these characters that we know Spider Girl and the different versions of Spider Woman kind of jump into the Marvel universe and see that. Do you guys think that they would hold up? But I've heard that they don't even show up as superheroes until the end, so they don't really get that chance to shine.
They don't get to do their superhero thing. There's like flash forwards basically to when someday they'll be superheroes. But mostly Madame Web's the only one who has any like superpowers.
Well, this is the point that like I'm such a purist and I haven't seen the movie yet, but like the fact that you're gonna have all the girls be Spider Person before Peter's even even gets there. That's where I'm kind of like I hate when they change like with the X-Men films. The fact that Havoc was older than Cyclops. When they change stuff like that, that just kind of gets me a little bit.
Wait, so he was? Oh, wait, no, I thought Cyclops was always the baby. Am I wrong?
No, Cyclops is the eldest brother.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Because he was okay. Before we get too deep into X-Men lore, because that's a tangent we always take. Josh, is there anything else you're watching other than living your best MadameWeb life? Apparently.
Oh man, I mean that's honestly like all I can think about. Me and my friends have just been laughing about it so much. I'm getting ready for Emerald City Comic Con up in Seattle. I'm going to be there next weekend. I'm not tabling. I'm doing a panel on Sunday discussion, but I'm just there to goof off mostly. It's like a vacation weekend. So I'm really stoked about that. It's like my favorite show on the West Coast, maybe.
Any creators or friends you're looking, forward to like meeting up with?
Yeah, a lot of them, but the big one is Levi Hastings. He's my artist for this Washington's Gay General book I did last year. And so we're kind of, the weird thing is like, monthly comics, it's like order Blue Beetle number whatever, or you'll never get it, right? Because it only comes out once.
Yeah.
But like this is like a bookstore book, so like it'll be around for a lot longer. So like you never stop talking about this book ever. So that's like it's hard to find new things to think about, but it's a lot of fun to see new people find the book like 6 months, 8 months later.
Yeah. Well, it's we do a comic book club here in Dallas that Josh, that's not here, runs, and so I'm definitely going to recommend it for next year's comic book club.
Oh, awesome!
Or I think we had one book fall through. Maybe we can slot that in.
That's right. Maybe we can slot it in this year.
Yeah,
I'll pitch it to him.
We told our buddy Josh, like, sorry, only one Josh allowed per stream. So,
but you could have an amazing and a spectacular Josh. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's bounce around real quick. Jeff, we were talking before the show that comics have been stellar this week. You want to tell us a little bit about some of those comics, and if anybody else has read those, feel free to kind of.
Oh yeah, I read a giant stack of comics this week.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, and every single one, I won't go over all of them, but it was basically Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, Titans, Nightwing, the Justice League Godzilla, Kong crossover, World's Finest, Ultimate Spider-Man 2, Daredevil. Yeah, it was Cemetery Kids Don't Die, like every single CobraCommander 2, every single one of these. I was just like, this is the best comic I've read. Then I read the next one. I was like, this is the best comic I've read. And then I read the next one. Yeah, they were all fantastic. I could point to a favorite moment, but Ultimate Spider-Man 2, that scene where Peter talks to his daughter, made my heart like explode all over the place.
I love how naive he is getting punked by the Shocker twice.
Yes, yes.
It's a very fun approach. I think Jonathan Hickman, he does this thing where he's like, I know you know what Spider-Man is, but let's just talk about it anyways. And then we'll go through it. He's a little bit older, but he's still the same goofball, right? I love the family aspect of it, like including his kids, especially that conversation you were talking about. And then Marco Cicchetto, just like doing some of the best work he's ever done, I think. Like just right now, Peter's only got a black suit on, which I'm sure we're gonna look at the new suit pretty soon. But man, it looks great flying through New York.
Yeah. And Hickman's so funny. Like I always, this is my thing that I talk about. Jonathan Hickman, he gets a lot of credit for these like big, epic stories that whatever. But I'm like, he's so funny. His run on New Warriors, his stuff between Sam and Roberto, like in space, it's just like bros in space hanging out. And his Peter is super funny as well. So
one aspect that I feel is a little underrated from that book is, and this is a spoiler for issue 1, I guess. Uncle Ben is alive, and he works with Jonah Jameson at the newspaper, and they go off on their own to make their own newspaper because like they want to be their own bosses, which is like look at Clay's face.
Well, they have a fun buddy kind of moment too.
I want just a series following them.
I have not dipped my toes in the new Ultimate books.
Just Spider-Man.
I'm pretty excited for X-Men, and Black Panther was pretty stellar too. So
yeah,
unfortunately,
the best book I've heard is the Black Panther book.
Yeah, unfortunately for my wallet, I'm probably gonna get all of them, and so cool. All right, let's keep going around the table. Clay, you want to tell us about one thing you
CobraCommander and that universe of Transformers and Duke. That is the best thing I'm reading right now. It's so fun, and every issue just kind of surprises you with the violence. But it's like you're just so caught up in, like, I'm reading this, story of these cartoons I grew up with as a kid, and then all of a sudden, a Transformer just kills a human, or or in CobraCommander, like he's just. I'm trying to think of an equivalent villain on screen that's as evil as CobraCommander is in these books, and I can't think of one.
I'm thinking like maybe the governor from The Walking Dead was kind of getting there. Especially towards the end when you saw how unhinged he really was.
Oh yeah,
or maybe even Negan. Like both of those villains. Like
I'll say this: I'm pretty sure I know who his protector is. The guy who's traveling with him.
That's
I didn't understand that part. Who is it?
So I'm pretty sure. Have you guys seen the animated movie?
No.
Resolution?
No. The original 1986.
The 86 movie.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Nemesis Enforcer. He's the big guy with the bat wings. I'm pretty sure because they use one of their spores to transform him to look like a human. But when they're shooting at him and he just comes in, just headbutts and caves the guy's skull in, I'm more than sure that's Nemesis Enforcer.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Joshua Williamson is having a lot of fun with these books, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think there must be an inside bet on who can do the most violent death. Because while we see a Transformer smash a human with his hands, in this issue, there is I don't want to spoil it, but just a headbutt that just causes an explosion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just wild, the violence that's in this, and I mean, it's fun. It's so weird because you just don't expect it with every turn.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really exciting to read. And then I've been trying to read through all my Moon Knights to get to the new Moon Knight book, and I keep burning myself by trying to read the digital versions, and it just bugs me to death. I'll go like that whole run of Moon Knight had 3 books that didn't have digital issues you could read. So like I put all my singles away, got out my iPad, and it got stuck. Had to go find an issue, pull it out, and so it's like I get to read digital, and then I'll end up on one that is just missing, and I have to go track down the hard copy. Oh, I should never give in to the digital copies. I should just stay with the physical copies.
So much easier though. Now, Josh, are you reading any of the Energon stuff over at Skybound?
No, I haven't had a chance to get into it yet, but those Transformers books look incredible. Yeah. Every piece of art I've seen just jaw-dropping. It's so much detail to draw Transformers. It's like I can't even think of another title that would have this detailed art. You know what I mean? Like Legion of Superheroes, because like the Legion can't go to lunch like 2 people. You have to draw like 700 Legion members going to the bank together.
Maybe a Jeff Darrow book.
Mm-hmm.
Like a Shaolin Cowboy or something that has that much detail of the violence and stuff. That's the only thing I can think of.
I know James Stokoe loves being detailed, but I think that's just his own style. That's not because the Godzilla does not require you to draw every single scale. on his back, right? Before we move on from CobraCommander, I know you guys have probably seen our post, but I did get my letter published. Like I sent in an email to them, and I got my first letter published, and I was like, "Look, I'm a new fan. I don't know anything about GI Joe, but these books have been very welcoming to new people, which I'm sure that was the goal when Skybound tried to, kind of started everything. And even though these books are all connected, you don't need to read all of them. Like it's a lot more fun if you do read all of them. But like I'm behind on Void Rivals, which is kind of the starting point. But Image did just send us the first volume, so I'll definitely be reading that soon.
There have been many comic creators that have gotten their start from writing letters into comic book pages.
Well, here it comes.
Kurt Busiek used to write letters all the time, I believe.
Yeah, I've seen those. Those are great.
All right, call me Skybound.
I printed my letter.
There you go. Thank you.
Didn't George R.R. Martin like used to write letters to like Fantastic Four?
Yeah,
right to the Fantastic Four.
Look at him now.
Who's that? I can't remember the Jim, the tall
Jim Shooter.
editor, Jim Shooter. Yeah, he wrote a lot of letters, and that's what got him his first job at DC at like 15 years old or something like that.
He was sending editorial notes even back then.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Kyle, you want to tell us about one or two things that you've been reading in comics or whatever?
Yeah. So you guys, we already went through two of my first ones. So I'm gonna go with JLA versus Godzilla versus Kong. This had some pretty interesting stuff. Like there's one moment where Godzilla is trying to attack, or my friends, they have one monster attacking Atlantis. You have Lantern helping the Atlanteans. Godzilla's coming that way. So what does Aquaman do? He officially releases the Kraken to help defeat the monsters.
Yeah. I gotta ask though, is the Flash efficient underwater? Because he's there, and I'm like, I feel like your talents could be used elsewhere. Like I don't know if water is the best medium for you to be running around in.
I mean, they're separating their help wherever they can, because they're down Superman. I also love the fact that Grodd actually takes control of Kong. The first they're there to act like they're like he's their god, and then he's able to really take control of Kong.
Cool.
Like, this is not good. This is not good.
Yeah,
It's fun the way that they're using like both universes. Where they talk about like like I love it when they do kind of trap Godzilla and they're like, oh, he's chained up with nth metal. Like that's just something you don't ever think you're going to hear. Godzilla chained up with nth metal.
See, that makes me also think like Gorilla Grodd having the control of Kong. Is that like their weapon of mass destruction, or does Ape City have more than just Kong that they could use?
Well, all I know is you kind of find out is Lois ends up talking to Mercy, and she ends up, saying, please help us. So she gives them all the information Lex had been doing. And because, it is the Legion of Doom that's trying to take control of this. And I can't remember what the device is, but basically she tells them that basically Lex has control of the Orca from the Godzilla King of Monsters, the device that would attract him. And so he's using that to try to, gain power and everything. So,
yeah, it's really fun to see all those characters kind of interact. I think we only have one more of those, if I'm not mistaken.
The way it's going, there's still.
It feels like there should be more, but I think there's only 6 issues in this.
I'll be surprised because if it doesn't, because I almost feel like there's still too much going on.
Yeah, for sure.
I think there's 7 issues altogether.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Josh, do you ever have that where they're like, you have to wrap it up in 6, or you have to wrap it up in 5?
I did a dodgeball book called Dodge City that got canceled at issue like 4, and so I was like, okay, we're gonna do 6, and then they're like,
oh no,
so that was tough. I'll get back there someday, so I'm not too worried about it. But that was tough.
I hope so, because I want to see that next season. That I think just the way you kind of frame that ending, where they're like, listen, this is kind of where we stop the games, but it's not over. Like that was really cool at the end. I read that this week, kind of like, because I knew you were coming. I was like, oh, I didn't know you had. It looked like manga, kind of. It had a lot of manga feel to it, and I love sports manga. And I was like, oh yeah, let me check this out. And it definitely was like, oh no, it's over. But I got to the last end of the book, I'm like, oh no, it's over. Where's the next game? So,
well, fingers crossed. Kara and I, the artist, talk about it all the time. So sooner or later, I guess, is the question. Is like 6 years ago. So like I think we got canceled because nobody knew who we were. But now hopefully a little bit of people know who we are.
Yeah, definitely go check it out. I borrowed it from my library, so it was like, so the book is out there for sure, so you can definitely find it. Cool. I want to talk about a book that came out this week as well. Alien, Black, White, and Blood. This is the anthology from Marvel Comics, which is really fun because these are just little short stories about aliens. Specifically, there's a story in the middle by Stephanie Phillips about kind of like a hunting preserve, and of course things happen because it's an alien book. Like anytime that you think the humans are in control of the environment and a xenomorph shows up, things go awry. But I love these titles because they have that restriction of like you can only use the black, white, and red, right? But in this case, alien blood is green, so that's like another color that they can add to their palette. And I think the artists like they really work that in a very fun way. So yeah, I love these little anthologies. Like they've been doing them all over the place. DC does their own as well, where they just kind of have these little restrictions, and they're just really fun because you kind of get to explore. It reminds me of the digital first that DC used to do, and I think Josh, you worked on a few of those.
Yeah, I did a few of those.
Wonder Woman, and I think Superman.
Yeah,
those are the ones I looked at this week. What are those assignments like when you get like? Did they tell you like you want to do a quick Superman or a Flash story?
Yeah, basically they're like 16 pages or something like that, and they're like mostly out of continuity. And so like you kind of have free reign to do whatever you want, but that's intimidating too. Like I find that like some writers like me kind of like that structure where they're like, okay, it has to be set here and you have to use these characters. And I'm like, great. But if they're like, do whatever you want, you could possibly think of, it's like, you spend like a month overthinking it. But the Superman one in particular, I was really proud of. So they let a lot of creators have fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to work in Bibbo Bibowski as in your opening.
I love Bibbo.
The way he says Superman and it's spelled out like SOOP. That I got to that, I was like, there's no way. And then I remembered kind of the character, who he is, and I was like, yeah, this is exactly how he would say Superman. Or I don't know exactly how that's supposed to sound, but that was really
It's
funny.
so funny.
Yeah.
A lot of fans are kind of divided about Bibbo, which is so weird to me because he's like a lovable goof guy.
Yeah.
But like I'm a 90s kid, so I like love Bibbo. But like people would come up to me after the comic came out and they're like, I loved your comic. Why'd you have to use Bibbo? And it's like I don't.
Well, and it's such an interesting premise too. Like that people think he's Superman, and that's like, how does that work? And then you kind of get into the rest of the story, and you're like, oh, okay, that's more of a thing that they're spreading the rumors about a lot of people being Superman, which is like, okay, but yeah, that was really interesting. Going like when you get to that opening, and he's at the Daily Planet, like, I need help, because that's where you go when you need help, right? I guess.
Yeah.
And then your Flash story with Pied Piper.
Yeah, that's my first DC comic.
Oh, when you get to the crux of it, I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like that was a really fun twist. I don't even want to talk about it because I want these guys to go read it afterwards. But I love Pied Piper. He's one of my favorite Flash rogues. So with that in mind, I'm gonna go around and ask you guys your favorite Flash rogue. So I'm gonna start with you, Josh, because you got to write a bunch of them in this book.
Yeah, Pied Piper's fun. I like weird ones like the Thinker is what I'm thinking of. They're great. I like some weird like crazy quilt. You know what I mean? Like give me the back of the who's who and like let me play with that. But like the big ones, like you can't beat Captain Cold, but I think Mirror Master has the coolest powers.
Yeah, for sure. Jeff, you got a favorite rogue in the
Flash? I'm a boring Flash. Like I'm Captain Cold. I like the big guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Clay, I imagine is similar for you.
Well, I mean, I've cosplayed as Captain Cold and Captain Boom.
Oh.
So it's between those two, it's tough. Like as much as the first Suicide Squad movie wasn't great, I kind of loved that Captain Boomerang because he was just terrible. And if you look at some of the stuff they cut out, he was like the worst human being on that team. He was really bad. And I think I have to go with him. And plus, Jai Courtney's pretty awesome.
In that one movie, though.
In that one movie, I know. But like, I have seasons of Captain Cold and Legends. That's fucking great, man.
Yeah.
Oh, Legends is so good.
Yeah.
So good. Oh, and that's the one thing I've always wanted to see is I'd love to see that Legends kind of transcend and be the survivors of a crisis that goes into the James Gunn universe.
Well, that'd be cool.
Yeah, they should definitely just give us a little cameo. I think James Gunn knows. Well, I think we might talk about that a little bit later too. But
I think also my deep love for Captain Boomerang is his original costume is ridiculous and silly. And that guy has now been in cartoons and on film. Like it starts off kind of as this base character who's like, well, he's just Australian and he throws boomerangs and he dresses like a stewardess in the 60s. And now he's like just this evil dude with a boomerang who kills people.
Right. All right, Kyle, what about you?
Cold all the way.
Cold. Oh, it's a cold room. Okay. All right. I know I'm surprised no one said Trickster because like I have very vivid imagery of
Trickster's fun.
Yeah, Mark Hamill does the Trickster in the TV show. Like for some reason, those are the only episodes I remember. Like the Flash running in the chewing gum and getting stuck. Like that's seared into my head. So
is it am I thinking is there a character called Brick? Is that's his name? Oh god. But he's like a big, tough, like impervious guy. He was a Flash villain.
Yeah.
There's like an old anthology short I remember reading for like the holidays where he like breaks out of prison like to visit his daughter on Christmas Day. And like I was like, oh man, I love Brick now. Like I thought you were kind of goofy, but they really found like the one thing to make him human, you know?
I'll say this: he's not necessarily a Flash villain, but the one time they pitted him against the Flash was in the Christmas episode for Justice League, where they had the Ultra Humanite, where he turns the rapping ducky into like this theatrical thespian, tells him the night before Christmas.
Yeah,
I really like that.
Yeah. All right. Before we move on to another round of what we've been watching, I did want to touch on, since we were talking about the digital comics, the Wonder Woman issue that you did. Where I've never heard of that Phobia as a villain. I don't know if that's a character you kind of dug out from the back of the closet from Wonder Woman villains. But I like that Wonder Woman, obviously she stops the villain, but that's not where her mission stops, right? She also wants to help him afterwards. And you get to those last few pages of that story and you see that she's back. Like she doesn't just catch him and then like put him in jail and then moves on, right? That's not Wonder Woman. So I thought that was really interesting. But because of the way you set up the story, you get to also use a few really cool Wonder Woman villains.
Yeah, so it's in what spoiler, I guess, but it's Wonder Woman's being mentally manipulated by Phobia, and so we get to see some of the rogues, and so that's cool. Like with Silver Swan and Giganta and Cheetah, and like getting to see them on the page. Like, I'm a Wonder Woman fan, but like I got to play with the whole bag of tricks, and like so Phobia, she's a new Teen Titans villain from way back in the 70s and 80s. She's like, that's kind of her whole deal. She like manipulates your minds and pulls out your greatest fear, and so I thought that was a good matchup against Wonder Woman, like kind of that mental foe instead of more like a physical threat.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And if you want to see some of those villains again, go read Tom King's Wonder Woman because he's killing it. Him and Daniel St. Pierre are doing some really amazing work. So let's kind of go around. Oh, I don't even know if I talked about anything I read, but let's go around the horn again, and then we'll get into our main part of the show. Now, Josh, do you have anything else that you've been watching, reading this week?
Oh man, you know what I am getting into right now is this Lorcana card game. I don't know if any of you guys play card games.
Yeah, the Disney card game.
Yeah, the Disney game. They just dropped a new set yesterday. I'm probably gonna have to go to the shop after this and start buying packs.
Cool.
I'm a card game guy. Like BlueBeetle, I kind of got familiar with Jaime like through a card game.
Yeah.
And like kind of weird stuff like that. So like I'm addicted to like a card game that has a character I like on it. And I'm like, it's so funny with this game too. because it's like all the characters in some of them you wouldn't expect to be in kind of like, it's not a combat based game, but it's kind of a combat based game.
Right.
And so it's like Magic the Gathering for like babies, and like I'm a baby, that's fine. So it's like you know, you at a tournament or something, they'll be like, here's my Winnie the Pooh, and you're like, oh, game changer, you know what I mean? Like time to surrender. And so I think that's so silly. I'm really enjoying Lorcana right now.
Have you pulled anything that you were like really excited for? I know that the rarity with some of these games, especially Lorcana, because I looked into it, I just didn't need to get into another card game at the time. But have you pulled anything that you're like, this is it, this is the one I want?
You know, so you know, I think they have like 3 levels of rarity. It's like I think it's like rare, super rare, legendary, or something like that. And it's just like, oh man, some of these cards you're never gonna get. But I got this foil. Some of these cards are like alternate universe versions of the characters. So it's like, what if like Cinderella was a knight, or what if like whoever was a sword, like, you know. And so one of them's Winnie the Pooh, where he's a wizard, but he's called a honey wizard. And I thought the art was so cool. I used to work at Disneyland on the Winnie the Pooh ride, so I have a soft spot for this guy. But
cool.
yeah, so blast from the past. But so I have the honey wizard card, and it's foil, and I'm like, it found me. You know what I mean? Like,
Nice.
It's destiny. He's not a good card. But I love the art, and I love that it's foil.
Well, I mean, a version of Winnie the Pooh is down in public domain now. So if you ever, you know, if you ever do something with that, you can take it to the next level.
Never say never. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. There's a new Star Wars game coming out. That's why I kind of held off on Lorcana.
Yeah, I'm excited about that too.
Oh, cool. Do you have? I imagine the tournament scene's pretty good. And I'm sorry if this is interesting to anyone else, but I love card games, and I'm really getting back into it with this Star Wars one. Like I've signed up for the like pre-release and all that stuff, so I'm very excited.
I used to play the Star Wars card game they had like around the time the special edition and the prequels were coming out.
Oh yeah.
That was weird because like they broke the game at the end of it, which happens for these card games because they're like, oh, maybe if we make bigger cards, they'll buy more packs, and like that only works for so long, I think. So for the Star Wars game, they have a uniqueness rule. So if, like, I play Luke Skywalker first, you can't play Luke Skywalker.
Right.
So what people were doing is after the prequels came out, they were playing Anakin as like a 1-drop, basically, like the weakest card. And so that was making sure that the other opponent couldn't play Darth Vader. And so it was the nastiest thing in the world, where you had this like hunt down and destroy the Jedi deck from Darth Vader. And then turn 1, they play Anakin. And you're just like, well, I guess I'm dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because that's your. Oh wow, that's so. I played a card game with dice that was recent. It's called Star Wars Destiny. It was very recent. Like it came out. Unfortunately, it came out right before 2020, so like it kind of got derailed by everything. But it was very similar. Where in your own deck you couldn't have either, but you had to either have Anakin or Vader and stuff like that. So yeah, they make very intricate rules. But yeah, but at some point, like those kind of games kind of break themselves, like you mentioned. So hopefully, this Lorcana looks like people are really excited about the stuff that's coming out. So hopefully, it's got a good longevity. And if not, if anything, like collecting Disney characters is never going to be like a thing that nobody wants to do. So
yeah,
it's a license to print money, but it's a lot of fun to play actually. And the matches are pretty quick, which I like.
That's cool. Yeah, it's easier when. Oh, let me see. Neil in the chat says the Decipher Star Wars game was indecipherable. I don't think I've ever got into that one, but cool.
Josh, you also worked on the WB multiverse.
Yeah, the multiverse is the fighting game.
Yeah,
so I wrote some of the dialogue from the characters.
Nice.
And
the big one.
What kind of mixture did you like doing in that game?
So like the main one was I had a good friend who went on paternity leave, and he was doing that job mainly. He wrote for most of the characters, but while he was on leave, they needed someone to write for LeBron James, because I guess the Space Jam movie was about to come out. And I'm the guy you want to get for LeBron James. So so I had to do a lot of research, and so I was like asking like my stepdad and everyone I knew who was really into basketball, and like watching all these interviews with him. And so I was like, okay, so my dialogue for him, he's like, he's like a leader, he's like a champion, has a little bit of the ego, and he's a little bit of trash talk. And so I was like, this will be great. And so I sent it to my bosses, and they're like, we don't like any of this trash talk. Get it out right now. And I was like, okay, no problem. I'll just put in some more boring lines, basically. And then I sent it in. They're like, that's okay. So let's show it to LeBron's people. They sent it to LeBron's people, and they're like, where's the trash talk? So I got another day's work. They had to pay me again to come back and put the trash talk back in. So that was the big thrill for me.
Oh, that's great.
Did you get to trash talk them like them? And you were like, I told you y'all should have.
So I know, right? So the game has like, if you say you're playing Bugs Bunny and you fight Superman or he's on your team, you have special things he says if like based off of that. So like he was like trash talking like Steven Universe or Adventure Time or Rick and Morty or whatever, and it's just like, this is so funny.
Let me see, just real quick comment from Leonard Kim. Whenever I see anything regarding Lorcana Online, it's about how people are struggling to buy packs. It sounds like So
oh boy,
unfortunately, with these card games, like there's
it creates a market.
The people that just want to like make money off of it, and they just buy up all the stuff. But I think they've done multiple printings now, so like I think they finally caught up to.
Yeah, starter decks are easy to get, and they come with packs. But I've noticed that getting the individual packs is pretty tough right now.
Yeah, that's why you got to get in good with your shop. Make sure that that's why shops are important for local shops, because they're the ones that are gonna get you, all that kind of stuff. So cool. All right, Jeff, let's go back to you. You got anything else you want to chime in on this one?
This week I finally sat down and read Arkham Asylum, which I'd never read before. And so it's one of those. So it came out. I'm a little bit older, but it came out like when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so at the time, I was just like all about Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane art and Jim Lee art. And so I was just like, so flipping through this as a little kid, I was like, where are all the pouches? Where are, what's going on? As I've grown up, I'm like, oh, this artwork is amazing, obviously. But then something interesting happened. I got to the letterer in this is awesome. I can't remember his name right now. Unfortunately, I'm trying to look it up frantically. But he writes the Joker's text in all red lettering, and my old man eyes were like, I cannot make any of this stuff out.
Oh, that's a little tough.
Yeah. So it kept getting put on the back burner as I was just like, oh, this is giving me a headache. But I finally powered my way through it. Grant Morrison, I would if I ever have time, I'm going to sit down and write all of Grant Morrison's Batman, because he writes Batman so differently from book to book. And he talks about it, and this is the 15th anniversary edition, where he talks about how this version of Batman is a younger version of Batman and thus kind of an idiot. But then he talks about how he really has this kind of, when you go back and read his like JLA stuff, and then his Batman run, the Batman Inc. stuff, he's like, that Batman is the competent Batman. He's super smart. He knows everything he's doing. But I feel like this Batman, and then his Batman from the Killing Joke, is just kind of like stumbling through his missions or whatever. And he's very gruff, and he doesn't know what he's doing. Anyway, but I'm happy that I did finally read this. I think it's very interesting. The artwork is
it Killing Joke, Alan Moore?
Killing Joke is Alan Moore. You're right. Okay. Correct. That's right.
Oh, and the letterer on Arkham Asylum is Gaspar Saladino.
Yes.
So from this, you're gonna jump onto when Morrison came back to DC to do like the whole run that took years, like led up all the way to the New 52, pretty much.
So I read all of his JLA run, and Batman is kind of Batman in the JLA for most of that run. And I read most of his Batman Inc. when he was writing that, and most of his Batman right up into the New 52. And then once the New 52 made that switch, I kind of dropped off. So I'm kind of missing a few chunks in there.
You need to finish out the Batman Inc. stuff.
Yeah.
A while ago, I got they have omnibuses now, hardcovers of the Grant Morrison Batman. I think I don't know if it's just 2 volumes, but I have 2 volumes of it right now, and it is beautiful. It is a gorgeous book and great collection, and like it's so many pages that it's actually kind of hard to read. So I'm like, I'm just gonna read this on the app, and you're just gonna sit on my coffee table and be beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's-
those omnibuses, sometimes I feel like I need like like a lectern to stand out, kind of open them up and just like flip through them.
Yeah, there's an
like that.
Alias omnibus that's like a little unreadable because of that.
Yeah, the Neil Adams Batman omnibus is so thick it's hard to even like hold, much less read.
I'm curious about these the new what is it called? Amalgamation, the Amalgam Universe omnibuses that are coming out.
Yeah.
There's 2 of them that are coming out.
I know Kyle's so hyped for this.
I just need them to release also digital versions that I can read, because as much as I want the omnibus, like I'm mostly a digital reader. So cool. All right, Clay.
Don't you fear some of your books disappearing though? Like,
what do you mean?
Because when you buy digital, you don't truly own them. Don't you feel like?
I guess for the most part, I buy them physically, but a lot of this stuff. Well, now that we work with DC, I get to read a lot of that stuff on their thing. But yeah, a lot of these I just go back and revisit on the Ultimate service. I don't, but I mean, I still buy all the physical stuff. And Marvel gives you codes. I wish DC would give me codes.
Yeah.
That would make it so much easier for me to get through everything.
That's what's scaring me, because with Funimation having been bought by Sony, they're phasing them out, forcing everybody to go to Crunchyroll, and any digital downloads they had on Funimation are going away.
Oh,
I thought they were giving you a chance to transfer your stuff somehow.
I haven't heard. If they have, I haven't heard anything like that.
Yeah, check your email. They might have sent you something.
I know. This is just stuff I'm reading.
Okay.
I don't have Funimation.
Yeah, I think the biggest fear would be the loss of DC books. I don't feel like Marvel would ever be sold by, Disney, but I feel like there could be a future where Warner Brothers sells DC to someone and you could lose all your digital copies.
Yeah, that's a nightmare.
Yeah. Especially people who've only gone digital, who just like wanted to save the space. But yeah, I can't imagine like, I mean, I think I have like maybe 10,000 digital comics, just Marvel. And if I ever lost that, I'd just be like, well, shit.
All right. Clay, what else you been into this week?
Who else is watching True Detective? Who watched the finale?
Oh, I was going to talk about that too. Great. Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I wanted to get into that. Because it's been a hell of a season. I have really enjoyed this. I mean, it has this sense of mystery about it. It gives you this dark, cold place to exist. Incredible cinematic shots of it, and just the horror of it all. Like in the beginning, when you find these scientists who are basically frozen together, it almost gives you a feel of like John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah.
Oh man, I have just enjoyed this season, and then it's weird because I like try to go online and talk to people who've watched it, and you just see so much hate for it, and it's like, what?
Really?
What?
I've
heard
nothing but good things about it.
Yeah, I don't know where you're hanging out on the internet, Clay.
Well, I just got to say, like, some incredible performances. I mean, they have a great cast. I don't know who the actress is that played the native cop. Yeah, Navarro. Oh my gosh, like she just has some intense scenes that, like, from someone I've never seen act before, that were great and on par with
Jodie Foster. Yeah.
Jodie Foster and John. I can't remember his name. The other police officer that worked for him. But what did you think?
Oh, I really enjoyed the season. So maybe this is a controversial take. My favorite season of True Detective is season 2, the one with Colin Farrell, which is no one's favorite season of True Detective.
No.
See, that's the reaction I was expecting. I don't know. I just really like that one a lot. Like Vince Vaughn is kind of goofy in it, and what's her name?
Rachel
from all the
McAdams.
romantic yeah, she like it just, I don't know, it just really works for me. I also really like Colin Farrell. I understand season 1's great, but yeah, this one I didn't know what I was gonna get into. I had just finished all of Fargo, the TV show, so like it was kind of more crime stuff, but also with this Alaska, like 30 Days of Night kind of like tone all over it, which is crazy. But yeah, it was great. It came out. Jodie Foster being this like gruff cop kind of asshole character was really fun. So yeah, I'm excited. They've announced the season 5 with the same showrunner, so like obviously HBO has some kind of faith in this. So yeah.
John Hawkes is the name I was trying to remember. He's the other? He's played the other police officer in there.
Gotcha.
I mean, it wrapped up really well. I was like, the thing I worry about lately is there are a lot of great shows that just don't nail the ending. I felt like this really got it, and it was a great watch.
Okay, and you were and it was Kali Reyes that you were thinking of, that played Navarro, who's the other police officer.
Yeah, and Jodie Foster, man, like, it's so amazing she doesn't get more work. It's just like, I love watching her work in this because she just becomes a different person, and even physically, the way she kind of carries that anger.
See, Leonard Kim, I think, agrees with me. I think he's talking about the season I watched, but yeah.
And Christopher Eccleston shows up for like
yeah, just a doctor, just
time, but he's so good.
It's really fun to see Doctor Who, like people who've been the Doctor, just what they do afterwards, and they're like, yeah, but you'll also always kind of be the Doctor, so like it's really fun to see you in this other role.
I know, so. and so wasted in Thor. I mean, so wasted in Thor. Christopher Eccleston would have been a great villain.
Terry in the chat, Vince Vaughn's hairpiece gives a command performance. Pretty good, pretty solid. I didn't even know. It was so subtle. I didn't even know it was there. Cool. All right, Kyle, what else have you been reading this week?
I was going to go on to Titans number 8, which was really good, I thought, because right now you're coming off the whole the
Beast World.
Beast World, yeah. And so, everybody's talking, like the news are talking about how like you have the Titans in, Bloodhaven, and then you have Amanda Waller, and now it's how the Hall of Justice. And so they try to, there's like, I think it's a hurricane happening, and they go to like save them, but they realize everybody's kind of afraid of Beast now. And you also realize that Raven is now her evil persona instead of her good persona, and her good persona is trapped in her gem. And she goes to see Trigun, and Trigun basically, she says, "I'm going to stay with them for a while." And he goes, "Why?" Because they're formidable. They're taking down, supervillains, gods, even you. And I want to tear them up from the inside out. And he basically takes her to this place and realizes he has like this, I guess, God, next level of God that he wants to make her into. So we're starting to see like the fallout of the Titans being the new Justice League, but the world not being sure they can trust him. And now what's going to happen? One of their own is going to try to take him out also.
Now, Josh, with all this Beast World talk, was there any talks ever to like bring in Blue Beetle into that? Because I think if any character should turn into some kind of animorph,
it should be Jaime, right? Yeah. No, we're a little siloed off from some of these big events right now. I think they want us to kind of find our own identity before we start having to cross over. I always tell people, if like Sinestro gets a new belt buckle, like we don't worry about it in my book. But like, if the moon blows up, we probably would talk about it, I'm sure. But it's fun to have Starfire in our book, and like I try to write her in a way we're not stepping on Tom Taylor's toes, because I'm reading it alongside everyone else.
When something like that comes up, a crossover, do you just get a call from somebody like Tom Taylor and he's like, "Hey, can we use?" How does that work?
Oh God, I haven't gotten roped into a lot of these big crossovers yet. That's kind of like I'm waiting for the call. But they did like Beast War Metropolis, I think, or Beast World like Gotham, and I'm like, next time we're doing like Beast World Palmyra City, like that's what we got to do. So hopefully we'll get the call, with the tap on your shoulder. It's like it's time. We have there's that Mark Waid event coming up too. It just got announced. So we'll see what happens.
So I like that Beast World was very kind of confined to the main book, the Titan series, and then these one shots that we get a look into, right? But it definitely is leading up. Like Amanda Waller has been plotting in the background for like a year now, and I think we're finally gonna see it this summer. ComicsPRO is going on this weekend, or it's had I think it just happened. So there was a lot of announcements that. Normally this would be our ComicsPRO show where we just kind of talk about all the news and announcements. There is one thing before I do my last thing I do want to ask, because they just announced that DC Comics is moving their release dates back to Wednesdays. Now, just on the scheduling side, it was very easy for us on the channel to we drop, DC Tuesdays, that's their reviews. Monday we get any advance from indie comics that we get in advance, and then Wednesdays we just do Marvel stuff, and then throughout the rest of the week. But how do you? And I'll start with you, Josh. How do you think comics belong on Wednesday? Like, is that where they should be?
I'm not like religiously attached to the Wednesday thing, honestly. It sounds like that's what Shops wanted, which
Okay.
is I would think it'd be the other way around. Because it's a lot of work to get everything set up for Wednesday if it's both publishers, right? So I thought it would help Shops a little bit, but I think maybe they're seeing foot traffic is kind of weird, and maybe enough people aren't coming in on Tuesday, they're still coming in on Wednesday. I don't know. So it's up to the shop owners. It sounds like they're happy with this decision now.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. That's something that the shops. I mean, so ComicsPRO is mainly for retail shops, and they get excited about what's coming out for the rest of the year. But because everything lives online now, we get to hear a little bit more about that. Jeff, are you a Wednesday guy? Like, do you care when your comics come out?
Having a pull list doesn't really, as much making sure I have everything subscribed in time is really more of the issue, I think. I can see where shops, because I feel like a lot of comic shops used to be closed on Mondays just so they could spend all day Tuesdays kind of getting ready for the Wednesday release kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or they would be closed on Tuesdays or whatever. So I can see where shops would be because back when I did work at the shop, there was kind of this weird, you have your new wall, and you have the DC stuff here on Tuesdays, and then the Wednesday stuff is out, but don't even look at it. Don't make eye contact with it because you don't want to get in trouble with anybody. So I can see where it'd be a little bit easier for the shops to kind of control
the secret shoppers that show up at the
right.
When I heard there was secret shoppers, I've talked to the owners around here, I'm like, I didn't know that was a thing. They really show up, and they're just to make sure you're not selling books early. That kind of
selling a book early is a big deal for
for
these.
What kind of punishment do you get if you're selling a book early?
I think there's a fine or something. I mean, I remember it being because I worked at a bookstore for a while, and when those Harry Potter books would come out, and this is way back when Harry Potter books were still being released. And there'd be these midnight releases, but those books would be under lock and key up until an hour before the releases, the midnight release or whatever. Because they were do not, if we catch you with a Harry Potter book beforehand, even in the shop as you're reading, you are in trouble,
Well, yeah, because I do remember the very last Harry Potter book hitting the bookshelves and the ending of the book being posted online. And my buddy Terry is in the chat, and he hadn't read the book yet. The book hadn't come out, and I said, "Do you want to read the ending?" And I just sent him the link. So it was his choice whether to read it or not read it, and see how the series ended.
I think that's still pretty mean, Clay. Even if you gave him a choice,
was it just the end? Did you just send them a link that just get to the end?
It's just the end. It's just the
just the words "the end," though.
No,
but not
it's the last couple of pages where they kind of wrap up, them as older people with their kids, sending their kids off to Hogwarts.
Yeah, I bet the border shops were probably hiring the mentors to guard, to guard the books. So before we move on, Kyle, Claire, you guys Wednesday warriors, or do you don't even you just don't have time? Whenever I get my books, I'll go to the shop.
Yeah. Whenever I have money, that's usually when I can go pick up my books. So, but again, that's why I kind of I have a pull list, and my shop knows I want Scotty Young covers. I want anything written by Patton Oswalt, anything really weird. They go, oh, Clay's going to want to read this. So
nice. Okay. I have one more book to talk about before we move on to just talking about with our guest. So this week I was reading Nightwing 111, speaking of Tom Taylor. And Tom Taylor has such a interesting way of writing that it caught me off guard. And I started to tear up in the middle of the book because anytime that Tom Taylor writes Alfred, I'm like, oh my god, here we go. Because unfortunately, Alfred's been dead for a while, right? But there's always flashback. I think Tom Taylor is really making sure that we understand that Alfred was a really important part of Dick's life. So yeah, like anytime I hear a conversation with them, and then you get to see the parallels with Dick and Bruce, and I'm like, oh, here we go again. But yeah, it's been really fun coming out of this Beast world. Like we're getting back to the Heartless of it all, which is a villain that I'm not super invested in, but I am super invested in everything else that's going on around. And I think this issue kind of brought me back into the fold. So yeah, Nightwing 111, really good stuff. And like Jeff said, like there's just so many good comic books that I don't know that I have enough time to get through everything, but we make time for the good ones. Is there anything else you guys want to mention that really stood out this week before we move on to our main thing? I know there's a lot of things on the notes, but I want to make sure that we stay on track.
Actually, I have a question for Josh that I'm going to pivot off of your comment here, Daniel.
Sure.
You're talking about Alfred being a mentor to Dick Grayson. And DC Comics is known for like a lot of their legacy characters and how they interact with the people that they are the legacy characters of, their mentors and whatnot. Jaime is interesting in that Ted Kord is, I guess, injured right now, and so BlueBeetle is kind of sort of acting as his mentor. But how fun is it to play around with like somebody who's a younger person who is looking for? He's got a couple of mentors, like in Starfire, like you mentioned earlier, and stuff. So how fun is it to have Jaime like deal with some of these older characters that have been around forever, and how he reacts to some of those characters?
I love that stuff. Going back to like Alfred, I wrote an Alfred story for Batman Urban Legends last year. Yeah, and so it's an Alfred and Batman team up, and I was like, "Can I do an Alfred story?" They're like, "He's dead, right?" And I was like, "Is that a no, or what are we doing here?" Like I said earlier, the problem is they're like, "You can tell any Batman story you want," and I'm like, "I want to do Alfred and the ventriloquist," and they're just like, "Ah, Josh, why can't you just pick Joker like everyone else?" I love that, but like with Jaime and his mentors, he's had so many mentors you could fill like a school bus with them, I think. But because he has so much he can learn from everyone in the DC universe. You know what I mean? Like Starfire is kind of his window to like this kind of the space world that he's a part of, and this cosmic destiny, and like Ted's kind of like old school. He's like Justice League International vibes, and like this is how you be a superhero, and like how do you live up to like the Dan Garrett Ted Kord legacy is like a big driving question for the series. But like it's fun to kind of have this built-in like mentor figure that like Jaime can go to for advice or for compassion or for anything like that, because he doesn't have all the answers yet. But as we'll probably talk about in the ongoing we're doing now, Jaime has a lot of responsibility on his weight that he hasn't had before. Yeah. And so like he's leaning on his mentors, more than ever.
I just hope Jaime knows to stay away from Guy Gardner when it comes to any advice of any kind. That's the only thing I hope. But
well, when I was reading Graduation Day, one of the questions I had was like, Batman has like a lot of sidekicks that are even younger than Jaime, and yet he says he wants him to be benched when he's talking with Superman. So it's always interesting. Like, does Clark or does Batman have this idea of like, as far as sidekicks, who's acceptable? Because like maybe he goes, well, Damian's really an assassin, even though he's like 14. So yeah, we can have him out on the streets, but
Damian is also like human. Like as much as he's dangerous, he can still be brought down. With the Scarab, they don't fully know the extent of his powers. And it comes from an alien race, so that's like when the alien race that it's from is coming to Earth, they don't want to take a chance of it, being used against Earth when they're trying to save it. So like
but Batman always has a plan. So I'm always curious, like, what is his takedown plan against Blue Beetle?
Oh man,
that's what I wondered. Does he actually have one? Maybe doesn't have one. That's why he has to be careful.
Well, luckily we have the source here, Josh.
Yeah, seriously. Batman's got plans within plans, right? That's his. What's that? It's like the meme, right? It's like can Batman beat Galactus? And you're like, with proper planning, Batman can defeat Galactus, right? That's like the thing. And so like he's got a backup for everything. There was that is it Batman Silent Night, the one with Santa Claus that Jeff Parker just did? Blue Beetle's in that, which is kind of a fun surprise for me. And spoiler, like Batman uses Blue Beetle to help take down a mind-controlled Superman. And I was like, it didn't even occur to me that he could use his powers like that. But I love it. So just like little things like that, you know, like you said, the Scarab is like full of surprises, and that's kind of the fun too. You can always reach into the bag and pull out some like new surprises.
Oh yeah.
It's a very 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 much a character that can kind of fit in a lot of different stories, which so Jaime is my favorite Blue Beetle, just for a lot of different reasons. One of them being that it's fun to see someone like myself on the page, right? When he came out in 2006, I was like, wait, his name is Jaime Reyes, like just, and I think so I know they've kind of changed, like, is he from El Paso? Did he live in El Paso, Palmera City, like all that stuff? Which, you know, that's fine. I don't mind any of the changes of that. But just like, yeah, it's a superhero that, you know, from Texas. Like, we live in Texas. I grew up here. Like, that's really fun to kind of see that approach, and just to see like what going through similar issues, not the superhero part, but like the family stuff, which the movie kind of also highlighted a lot on that. So,
well, the bilingualism of the book too is really, I think is really great. It's fantastic because I'm again older than Daniel, but like I didn't have anybody like Jaime growing up, so there was nobody for me to kind of like relate to. You know, my favorite person is Captain America, so like Steve Rogers is blonde and blue eyes and whatever. But going back and reading Graduation Day and some of the early stuff, I really do appreciate that he is, you know, a voice out there. And kind of going back to Clay's point, I think one of the things I also really enjoyed is in that last issue, Superman and Batman did kind of like, well, let's let Jaime, you know, do his thing. They kind of come around to eventually being like, you take the lead on this. And Starfire is, of course, a big component for like cheerleader for that. But I enjoyed that kind of like interaction where they're like, okay, we trust you kind of thing. And I think that's important for, you know, younger readers to see.
I think Batman trusts him because Batman has a plan now. That's what I feel like. Is like, now I know how to take him down. Go ahead.
Batman remembered he was friends with Santa Claus, and then he was like, oh, yeah.
He was trained by Santa Claus, which blew my mind when I read it.
One of the best.
That was not in that dark.
Yeah. All right. We are going to get back to Blue Beetle, but I also want to talk about some of the other Josh's work. But Clay, do you want to kick us off? You have a question at the top about kind of an origin story.
Yeah, because we always on the show we talk about our comic book origins. So Josh, what was your first comic con experience and first pro you ran into, and what was early Josh pre-writer like?
Oh man, okay, so I didn't go to a Comic-Con until I was already doing an internship at a comic book company. So I always wanted to go, but we didn't really have like any cash and money, and we didn't like. I was kind of just too far. I grew up maybe like 2 hours away from Los Angeles, and so we didn't have any conventions out there. And going to San Diego was just like never in a million years. But like I remember, I like begged my mom to go to Anime Expo one year in Long Beach, and like I didn't realize how conventions work, and I was like, oh, we can just show up on Sunday at like noon. No, you can't. You should have ordered that badge like 5 years ago. You're never getting in, and so that sucked. But like, I think the first show I did was WonderCon. It's in Anaheim now, but it used to be up in the San Francisco area.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool. Just like, you know, it's huge. You know, going from like a comic book shop to like a convention floor that's filled with comic books. And, you know, WonderCon, you know, at least back then was all about comic books. And so that felt like a big deal. First creator, who did I meet? Trying to think. You know, I had my internship at a Dark Horse Comics, and I met a lot of people from their TV and film side because there were always people coming and going. And so I met like I have a story. Mark Hamill kind of cussed me out once, but I'm not going to get into the details. I'll tell you offline.
Yeah, I'll make a note to
yeah.
go back to that.
Yeah, I want to hear that.
But a lot of like creators that were kind of coming up in Dark Horse at the time, like I think I was it or like Matt Wagner. I think I had a phone call with him once, and that was really cool. But like just like the Hellboy team at the time was really someone who was those were people that were always coming and going in the office. Just stuff like that. Like I try to think of who like the first real creator that like blew my mind away. You know, it might be like Mark Andreyko. He was doing the Manhunter book when I was getting into DC really for the first time. He did a signing at the Golden Apple Shop, which is here in Los Angeles. It's actually close to where I live now, but I drove like the 2.5 hours to get him to sign my Manhunter books, and that was like the biggest thrill in the world for me.
That's cool.
One of the characters is inspired by like literally just one of the employees at Golden Apple Comics. And so there's like Manhunter has like a sidekick in that book. And so he's like literally just this guy who works at Golden Apple. And for me, that was like the funniest thing in the world.
What was your first comic book?
You know,
that you read?
Yeah. You know, I was always into like the Sunday funnies and stuff. Like even as long as I can remember, like my grandparents were reading them to me every day and stuff. But like for like main comics, I remember, I think it was X-Men 300, I want to say. I think it's the one, I want to say Forge proposes to Storm, and she's like, I'm good. And so they have a lot of complicated history. So it wasn't an immediate yes, basically. But he like offers it to her, and she's like, I think it's about that, and like her like deciding whether or not she's going to go through with it or not. That was cool because Storm's my favorite X-Men. So like I remember like going through the long box and like, okay, where's Storm? Where's Storm? Where's Storm? And like I found like the $2 comic or whatever it was.
Yeah, my first comic was X-Men 181, which is a Storm Kitty Pryde story, and there's no action. It's just them talking about her change that she went through during the Morlocks, and then like I think 5 issues after that, you get into the Barry Windsor Smith life-death love story of Storm and Forge. So it was like, that was my exposure to X-Men early on. And I was like, oh, this isn't all just fighting. This is like a soap opera with these cool characters that can do cool and different things. So yeah, I really loved Storm from the beginning.
Think about it. I think I may have gotten a garage sale for a copy of like What If. And so it's like, what if the all new, all different X-Men never formed? And so it's like when Beast and Iceman and Angel and everyone go on Krakoa, normally they get captured by Krakoa, and that's why Professor X gets the Wolverine and Storm and Colossus and everyone together. But in this one, they escape and they defeat Krakoa. And so it still ends with the Dark Phoenix saga and everything, but she wins, basically. Whoa. And so, like any good What If, it ends with the universe ending. And so that was like, I didn't realize you could do that in comics. I was reading like Snoopy, you know what I mean? Like I had no idea.
Do you have a favorite Storm iteration?
Oh gosh. Honestly, like Chris Claremont's Storm, especially in the 80s when she loses her powers and is still leading the team. Yeah. That's so cool to me. But like, I'm a 90s kid, so that animated series Storm is like, I know her dialogue's really goofy. I rewatched it recently and I was like, oh man, Storm, you're dropping some clunkers right now. But it's like she's still powerful and cool, and like I totally get why I was into her when I was a kid.
You're prepping for the release of 97, in next month?
Oh yeah, you gotta.
Yeah.
I hope they do some strong Storm storylines because they're obviously not going to do them in the films.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I hope they do some good Storm stuff, but Storm doesn't get a lot of solo episodes in the old animated series, so I hope she gets some attention in the new one.
Yeah. I mean, just like her Morlock storyline, the life death, her connection with Forge is great. I loved when she went to Asgard. And she threw that. That was an amazing look Art Adams put together for her. So she has a lot of epic stuff.
They still touch on all that Storm Asgard stuff in was it Immortal Thor right now? Storm's popping up in that.
Yeah. All right. Jeff,
are we pro Mohawk Storm?
Yeah, I was gonna.
Because I have a friend who's like, I was talking to some other friends and I was like, oh, did you see the new 97? And a friend of mine was just like, I want Storm with the full flowy hair. I don't like Mohawk
But
Storm.
once you read how she got the mohawk the first time, you're like, hell yeah, it's so fucking metal. Just like so. All right, Jeff, you have a question about one of the books that are not DC related, and maybe some historical research. You want to go into that one?
Yeah, I was fascinated to hear about the Washington's Gay General book that you wrote. And I saw you in a different interview saying it took about 4 years of research of on this person, on Baron von what's his?
Yeah, Baron von Steuben or Baron von
Steuben.
Steuben. I forget. I always forget. So it's pronounced one way in Prussia where he came from, and then he came to the U.S. and everyone pronounced it wrong, and he's like, "That's fine." So
let's just go with it.
Yeah.
Is there any? I was curious. Is there any other historical characters that you came across in doing your research where you're like, "Oh, I want to now go down this rabbit hole for this person"?
Yeah. So Washington's Gay General is about this Prussian general who came to the U.S. in the Revolutionary War, Baron von Steuben, and he was kind of this larger-than-life figure. He trained under Frederick the Great. He fought in the 7 Years' War. He was a prisoner of the Russians for a while. They tried to get him to turn sides. He didn't do that. And so he had this like big career. And then he came to the United States to help us during the Revolution. And so like Valley Forge, like it was a nightmare. We all know those horror stories of how bad the winter was. Like he's the one who kind of turned it around and like taught the military how to be an army. Like they had generals, but like they didn't have the experience fighting someone like Britain, who was like the superpower at the time, right? So like he had all this experience. So we kind of touch on that and kind of all this like lost history. He's now what we probably call like queer or bisexual or gay, obviously the title. And so like, there's a lot of his life we don't know about. And we kind of have to read between the lines for some of these people who lived so long ago. So that's a big part of the book. As for other people we kind of talk about, we avoid Alexander Hamilton a bit in the book. We mention him like very briefly, but like he has a whole wild life and everyone thinks that he had this mad love affair with a dude. And I was like, if we we'll do our own Hamilton book if we want to get to that someday. Because like he has such an interesting life and like even the Hamilton musical like kind of glosses over all that stuff. So like there's so many people and so many people we'll never know about.
Well, I do find that part really interesting as well because there's a lot of history, I guess, as they say, is written by the winners, and that there is there's a lot of terminology that we have today that they did not have back then. And then two, I do feel like much like there is a lot of whitewashing in history, there's probably a lot of straightwashing in history as well, where you just lose all those stories to time. And when you really think about history, it's not that long ago. So it's interesting that these stories could just be gone if we don't research these things,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious though, who else should we be reading that is reclaiming queer history like this? Because
I'm actually at Emerald City Comic Con next week. We're doing a panel on this same topic. So who's going to be on it is we've got Greg Lockhart. He did a book called Liebestrauss that's really good. He has a new one called Trick Pony. Liebestrauss is like a World War II thriller of sorts, and then it's a real tragedy. It's really hard. It's good. And then Trick Pony is kind of about like rodeo culture basically, and those are all like kind of queer books that kind of touch on different periods. Grace Ellis has a book. I'm gonna totally blank on the name, but it's like it's about Patricia Highsmith, who is like a famous lesbian author who's really has like a complicated life and like it's kind of problematic. But the book doesn't apologize for that. You know what I mean? It's like warts and all, like she's important, but like you got to separate some of her opinions back then with like her work, and that's kind of hard to do. So it's really complex. And so that's kind of the thing we run into too, is like, there are stories of like queer heroes, but like there are a lot of fun stories about like queer villains too. So like, I don't know. I'm reading Brooms right now, and I'm blanking on everything right now. I'm just falling short. But so Brooms is kind of a queer historical look at like, what if like magic existed kind of in the 1800s, and what does that mean for like some people are allowed to use magic and other people aren't allowed to use magic. And so it's kind of like it does have kind of like a civil rights beat to it. but it's still about like flying on brooms and going on adventures and stuff. And I think that's a cool way to kind of touch on those topics.
Cool.
Okay,
Well, if you're at
cool.
Emerald City Comic Con next week, March 3rd, go check out the panel. All the information it's on your Twitter, but also like it's on the online. Because I think those are the panels that I like to attend, like things like that, where it's like I'm not gonna stand 3 hours in a line to like go see somebody from a movie. I want to talk like let's get down to the comics and let's talk about things that are not just every. I talk about the the big DC comics and all that every week. Let's talk about some other stuff, and I think something like this is pretty cool. So if you're at Emerald City Comic Con, you can plan that. I think that's on the Sunday, if I'm not mistaken, March 3rd.
Yeah, we're Sunday at like 3 o'clock or something. We're like, that's a good way to end the con, I'll say.
Yeah. You could take a load off too, like, because man, walking around conventions, it catches up to you, but especially by the third day.
Oh yeah.
That's how I get my steps in.
Sure. Yeah, the one time a year I get my steps in. It's at the convention. Kyle, do you have anything you want to learn from Josh here? Since we have, I know you're a big BlueBeetle guy. So anything about the...
So before you took over the book, did you have any history of the character, or did you grow up kind of like reading any of the books or being a fan of like Ted before like kind of brought?
Yeah, so Ted was my guy for a long time. But, he's still my guy, but Jaime's special now. But like I was reading Justice League International reprints and stuff when I turned like 18, 19, I want to say. I was going in old long boxes and finding DC had these really gorgeous reprints back then too.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to catch up. And so I love Ted through those books. And then I didn't get into kind of his 80s stuff. Len Wein had a pretty long run on the character in the 80s. And I started reading those now as like research, and we pull some of those characters into the present, which is cool. But like, yeah, Ted's always been like one of my favorite heroes. He just has like, he's human. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
my friend described him, and I mean this lovingly. He can do all the things Batman can do, but worse. And I think that's a good way. I think that's why we love Ted, right? He doesn't give up.
Yeah.
Were you like, I guess, what was your opinion when they killed him off and brought Jaime on? I mean, like when that first happened, because I mean, I never hated the character, but I wasn't a real big fan of Jaime until really when they introduced him to Batman Brave and the Bold, the animated series. And Will Friedle was voicing him, and then I started really diving more into the character and more in the comics and in other cartoons. But like at first, when they killed off Ted, I was kind of like, just why? And then I just kind of was like, I'm done. And they tried to bring another character, and I don't want this. I want Ted, not this new kid. So.
Yeah, no, I was shocked when they killed off Ted in Countdown to Infinite Crisis. I want to say that's probably the first big character death that like shocked me. Except for like, I think I started really getting into DC with Kingdom Come. So that had a bunch, that's like, there's a body count for that book for sure. And but like for mainline continuity, it was definitely like Ted's death. And like, I didn't know where they were going to go next. Like I got in on the ground floor of all this Infinite Crisis buildup. And so it felt like there's this real momentum going all the way from like Identity Crisis all the way to 52 and beyond. Like that was such an exciting time to be into the DC books. And like, I think if you read my BlueBeetle run, you're like, oh, this guy definitely got into comics during the Infinite Crisis time. And so like, I always liked Jaime. Once I found out his name was Jaime Reyes and I saw the costume, I was like, I'm all in.
Okay. We got a question from
you talked
chat.
about how. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead and do with the chat.
I just want to, because I know Terry put in this a little while ago, so I want to make sure that since we're talking BlueBeetle, what makes you kind of gravitate towards BlueBeetle, and like what do you dig about the character of Jaime?
Yeah, I like he's kind of like a wide-eyed, well-intentioned. He's like he's a classic like do-gooder, but like I always say that like Jaime wishes he were Batman, but he's actually Superman. And like, I think that's kind of interesting. Like, he feels this responsibility and he has this big community around him, this big family. We have a big cast for the book, and that was important because it's about the people around him that kind of like lift him up, and also the people he has to care about to protect. So it's like, it's kind of that kind of thing. And then I like, he's like between two worlds in like so many different ways. He's like alien, and he's like also magic a little bit. He's like, he's he's Jaime, but he's also Kaji Da, and like all that stuff, and like that's really cool to me. He's of this big legacy, but also like he's on his own. Like Ted is nothing like Jaime. Ted never had the scarab. He doesn't have any of that experience with Kaji Da, and like Jaime really has to figure things out for himself. And so it really felt like Jaime's the beginning of like that next wave of heroes. And so that's something I've always thought was really cool about him, is like that potential.
Yeah. I did want to show, this is one of my favorite panels from graduation day,
Yeah.
where you kind of see like
Yeah.
the family that was built throughout that run with like the existing family, the new family, all the new characters, and how everybody's kind of moving forward to the the current Blue Beetle series. That was just so much fun to put together, and I love Jaime and Ted kind of hanging out together. Like that's why that first issue of the new Blue Beetle kind of wrecked me. Well, the first and the second one, right? Because in the first you have a big incident that happens, and then in the second one is the fallout and how Jaime feels about everything. That like there's a few panels where he's just kind of sitting in the hospital, kind of in the dark, and just like thinking about how everything is. He has a bigger responsibility now, and like maybe Ted got hurt because of him. So like that really hit. Like when I was reading that, I was like, it's not your fault. I just wanted to go over and give him a hug. Like it's not all on you, right?
Yeah, he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders in Scarab War, and that's why he like, that's why he starts to question things. I think leading up to the finale is like, what kind of hero does he have to be to like stop something like that happening again? So like that's like the big question over the book, and like I love our huge cast. Like I love all the characters, and like I think it's because I was reading all those Claremont books or Justice League International that has like a big cast too. It's like I love the ensemble. It's still Jaime's book. It's front and center. When Jaime's not around, everyone's like, "Where's Jaime?" So like it's still a Blue Beetle book, but it's like I hope it's a little bit more than that.
Yeah. Before we let you guys ask more questions, I want to get one from so people on Twitter also reached out, and Ozzy listed a bunch of questions, but I'm gonna pick my favorite one. Does Jaime live in or over his aunt's diner, or what's his current setup for Jaime?
Yeah, Jaime lives in like a room, basically living over his aunt's diner, and so like Gloria is his tia, and she runs the diner with her partner Marisol. And so Gloria is inspired by my grandma, who runs a Mexican restaurant in Southern California, but they have one in San Antonio too. That's really inspiring for Gloria's diner in the book. So it's Ray's Drive-In if you're ever in San Antonio, and then it's Puffy Taco if you're ever in LA. So
cool.
It's like they live in San Antonio. They have a house like, I won't say exactly where, but very, very close to the diner. And so it almost feels like you're like living in the diner. And so like I wanted to like capture that as like, he's even when he's resting, he's still like at work.
Nice. Well, yeah, I wanted to, because I said Ozzy mentioned that, so I wanted to pick a fun question for sure, because I feel like a lot of the other stuff is a little bit maybe spoilery for the future of the book, so I don't want.
Yeah, I'll respond to some of them on Twitter for Ozzy, because Ozzy's been a big fan of the book from the beginning.
Oh, that's great to hear.
I'll say this: the food from Ray's Diner looks amazing.
Oh, it's so good. It's the real deal. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to make a road trip down for that.
All right, Clay, you wanna throw us another question?
Yeah, this was a personal one because I did a little dive into your Instagram. Would you love to be a judge on Dragula?
Oh man, I would. I don't have the eye for it. I'd be like, that's good. Yeah, that's good too. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have the vocabulary to describe that stuff, but like, they had this horror competition that's like a drag show too, but it's like Fear Factor meets like Drag Race. So they do like a contest, like sit in the coffin with all these bugs crawling over you for 3 minutes or whatever it is. And then at the same time, they also have to do fashion shows at the end of the episode. So it's weird. So I dressed up a little bit. I didn't go full drag, but I got close. And so like that was really fun and like out of my element. I don't do anything. I'm just wearing like a jumpsuit right now. I don't put too much effort into it, but I would love to be a race on or a judge on like that, or like sure drag race, or like, you know what I like, those like home renovation shows. There's some of these reality competitions. Like I think there's one called like Battle on the Beach, where they have all these beach houses they're renovating and they're competing. I want to be on that. I want to walk in and be like, this tile's ugly, like you lose. So
This thing doesn't go here. What's wrong with you?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Boulay brothers have kind of like, that's brought me into the drag world and understanding like everything about it. But then their twist on it is just the horror side of it. And so you go in, and then sometimes you find some people, you're like, oh, that's good and scary. And then it's just like, there are some people that will turn their character into something truly horrific that you just don't expect. So it was exciting to see that because I'm just learning about it. So I saw that you were a fan. I was just curious about how much you dug the Boulay brothers.
Oh yeah, I love the show, and like their aesthetic is so creepy. Like I'm not a big horror guy, but like that's about as much as I can take as like an episode of Dragula.
I mean, some of the stuff with the Red Scarab, like, really leaned a little bit towards kind of the horror of that, a little bit of body horror, and also just like slasher vibes too, like from this arc. Like it wasn't fully there, but like you could definitely make a case, especially with the art. The art team on your books is so amazing. Like they, I'm glad that you call them, especially when you call out like, you know, the letterer.
Oh, Lucas
Yeah,
Catoni,
Lucas, like
yeah.
he's so good, and just like the team just puts such a fun twist on the book, and they can really make things look very different, very stylized too. Like I love the, it gives me a lot of manga vibes too, because I'm a big fan of anime and manga. So like, and I see that a lot of the artists that you've kind of worked with, they have a little bit of those inclinations. So is that kind of a choice? Is that just kind of what happens to be with editors putting you together with
Oh no,
the artists?
you know, we have our editor Andrew Marino, who's like been a big champion for the book. He was trying to get me to write Blue Beetle for like years before we got to do that round robin competition where
Yeah.
we got close to getting the book greenlit and then we didn't. And then I thought that was it. And then maybe like a year later, they call me up and they're like, there's a movie coming out. People are going to want Jaime Reyes stuff. And like, you're our guy. So that was really cool. But like, you know, we've had the same creative team from the beginning, and like that doesn't happen. We've done let's see, we did 6 and then 6 and 7, so we've done 13 issues so far. And you know, it's incredible. You know, some of these books, they change the artist halfway through the book, and we've had the same colorist, letterer, artist, and all that stuff. And like Adrian does cover for every issue too.
Yeah.
So like it's so cool to have everyone together. And like he has a real manga sensibility for sure. It's like he loves Kamen Rider, and if you watch Kamen Rider, you can
yes.
definitely
I
tell.
mean,
Like,
you see it. If you,
yeah,
like if you know,
I haven't watched a lot of it yet because I have this fear that I'm going to be like stealing from it if I watch it. So like I'm going to wait till I'm done with Blue Beetle, then I'm going to mainline Kamen Rider finally.
Have you seen Shin Kamen Rider?
No, I haven't. I know I want to watch that one because Shin Godzilla is like one of my favorite movies.
Okay. All right, yeah. If you get a chance, watch it. I loved it. I mean, I'm a huge Kamen Rider Tokusatsu fan, but like I thought Shin Kamen Rider was amazing.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I love. Like I said, I love the. It really plays well too with the fighting and all that. Feels very much like, you know, if you grew up watching anime, like a lot of those fights, especially if you go to issue 6 and you might have seen a little panel from that at the beginning of the stream. Like pulling shots for that intro was very easy because all the pages are like, oh, this one is so cool and this one's so cool. Yeah. It was more about narrowing it down. So like I knew what I wanted to use. I just didn't know. Like it would have been a 10-minute intro if I had used all the panels that I wanted to. But Jeff, let me throw it back to you. You got another question?
Yeah, I was going to ask earlier. So you talked about the Blue Beetle versus card that was like one of your favorite cards.
Yeah.
Game. Well, did you have any other cards from that game that you're like,
oh man,
alternate universe you would be writing?
You know, it's funny because like I said, we didn't have a lot of comics growing up, but what we could do is like they would do these like DC encyclopedias or Marvel encyclopedias or Batman encyclopedias. And so I would buy those because those were like $20 and you'd get to see all the characters. but also you don't just get to see the A list. You get to see like the D and the C and whatever. So like the card games are the same way, right? Like you need Superman cards for sure, but like sometimes you need like an Eradicator card, or like you need like a Kellex or like Gangbuster or whatever. And so like that's how I fell in love with some of these characters. Is not because like a great story I read with them. That's something I found later, because the card was good. And so like who's a Darkhawk is a character who I didn't even know existed until the card game, and his card is so good. It is so good in the Spider-Man deck. So that's like that was a big thrill for me, is like that sort of thing. Is like, and the Jaime card's good, but it's very specific. It's good for one deck, but that deck was like unbeatable when it came out.
Oh. I need to dive into this other game. Yeah, that sounds.
I want to see a BlueBeetle Darkhawk crossover now. Honestly.
Oh, they have very similar vibes, and Adrian would draw the hell out of that too.
Yeah. All right, I want to ask, because you said that the BlueBeetle kind of came out. Oh, this new book, they wanted to have something because the movie was coming out, and I know that the movies and the comics are very separate. But did you get any like, hey, come watch the movie, or especially because you're in that area, kind of would probably make it easier to go to the premiere. And also, like, did you get any insight of what the movie kind of was going to be before? Like, I don't know if there's any conversation.
So I mean, yes and no. I didn't get to go to the premiere because I was out of town, unfortunately. That was heartbreaking. Actually, I was like, do I fly across the country to go to this premiere and then fly back? Because I was like, BlueBeetle it was such a big deal last year, and this year he's like, it's such so. They didn't really tell me a lot about what was going to happen in the movie. Like, they're like, so he's going to be in this new city, Palmera City. That's going to be his home in the movie. And so and then we're going to introduce Ted Cord's sister, Victoria. And like, we're not telling you to use these things, but like, this is your chance if you want to do it. Yeah. And so I saw like a big opportunity there, just because like, I love El Paso for Jaime. I think that's like awesome, but I wanted to do a story that's about like the next step for him in his hero career. Right. So I say like, Palmera City is kind of his metropolis, and then El Paso is kind of his Smallville. Although El Paso is a big city, but that's kind of how I think about it. He'll always have El Paso, he'll always come back there, but like Palmera is the city that needs him right now. And then for Victoria, I just thought the idea of giving Ted a sister was so cool. Ted doesn't have much of a supporting cast, for one, and I was like, well, I want to give him some more characters to play with. And also, like, it's an interesting dynamic for Jaime, because, like, Ted's very much like Jaime's mentor and like a white light for him. And then, like, what does that make Victoria? And that's something we're still kind of exploring in the book. Like, I think she has a really interesting like journey. You don't know where she stands half the time.
Yeah, she's such an interesting character, and I like the version in the movie, but the version in the comic book is so much more complex, because if she was more like in the movie, in the books, like, it'd be like Jaime asking Lex Luthor for help, which is like, what the hell? But in this case, it feels like there's more of a gray area too. Like, there's always the self-interest that Victoria has for like her own, whatever her own plans and machinations are. But I still feel like she kind of wants to like look out for her brother too. I do feel that. Whereas in the movie, she's just like straight up evil.
Straight up evil.
Yeah, my thought is like, we have more space to do that Victoria story than the movie did, for sure. But I will say that, like, I see it like Ted is kind of like an anchor for Victoria, and kind of like her morality and her judgment. And like, once Ted's off the table because of the blood scarab, like, you don't know where she's going to land. And so I think that's really exciting.
Right. Now, I also saw you asking on Twitter about how many people Jaime has smooched with. Have you gotten a final list of all the smooches?
I was most surprised, because I was just going off the top of my head, and I get bored. I'll like make lists of all these things. Like, I'm like, maybe I'll need this later. And so I made up the list, and it's like it's a small list. And then I was like, okay, I better ask everyone else. I bet the fans know, like, he's been in a lot of like Justice League books or like Titans, and maybe I'm just forgetting. And so, like, no, he hasn't. Dude hasn't gotten many dates, I'll say. So that's definitely something we got to work on for Jaime. We need to up his game for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it back to Clay.
Oh, I just if you were in the position where they came to you and said, "Okay, we're going to have Jaime take over the Justice League because we've lost that team," let's just say the Trinity is gone, and
Sure.
Jaime can run the Justice League. Who would be on that team for you if you could write it?
Oh man, you know it's hard to do a Blue Beetle, any Blue Beetle on the Justice League and not think about Justice League International. So I feel like you'd have to bring in some of Ted's friends, right?
Yeah.
But who are my favorites on the JLI? It's like Fire and Ice. I feel like it's not the Justice League without them. Or like, you know, Booster and Ted would be kind of fun too. But I like these new characters. I'm spoiled because I like my new characters. So like I'd like to bring like the Yellow Beetle, Dynastis, maybe have her pop in, Jamara. Or and then I like other, you know, I love random characters. Like one character I'm really desperate to write for right now is a Rocket from the Milestone books.
cool.
So it's like I always thought that she was so cool, and she's great in Young Justice, the TV show. So I was like, there's something here. I feel like she hasn't gotten her great story yet, and like I definitely want to get her closer to that.
Oh, cool.
Are those Milestone characters more difficult to use because Milestone's kind of its own little thing, like legally, or how does that?
I haven't really asked, honestly. I was like, it's for some of these team ups. I have like a 20 name long list of characters that like if we get enough time, I'm going to do those team ups, and like Rocket's on that list. But like, I don't know if there's special rules for them or anything. I think right now they're trying to build up those characters like Static and stuff in like their own world, and then like start to filter it in, just like we're doing in Palmyra City. I feel like they're doing that in like, what is it, Detroit for like Static, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you said the name. You pronounced the name Dynastis because I'm first language is Spanish, so I didn't know how to pronounce that really when I was reading it. I would just say it in my head. Like every time I would say it differently. Like Xiomara is a name I've heard before, but I didn't know like her superhero name. So that's really cool. Like, and I like those characters a lot. Like obviously they've gone through quite a journey since they were first introduced to where we are now. But yeah, it's forming out to be quite a formidable team that Jaime's kind of assembled. And I feel like wherever we're going, he's gonna need the support.
For sure.
Yeah, I got a chance to read issue 7, and I won't go into anything.
Cool.
I mean, it's a beautiful issue with guest artists that have been announced. But from there, like, you know, I don't really even know where we're gonna go, but I'm pretty excited for it. But yeah, next issue is make sure to pick up 7, the Kif Giffen tribute, which you'll see a lot of love there as well. So
yeah, we've got some great artists. You know, we have our Adrian Gutierrez is around. You know, he's still in the book in issue 7.
So good.
But because of like the we're doing some time travel. We're going to some different eras in continuity, and we're kind of like spotlighting all these cool characters and teams that Keith Giffen worked on over the years. So we get to visit kind of the greatest hits. And so we have like Coley Hamner comes back and does a Blue Beetle moment set in El Paso. I won't tell much more than that. But we've got like Natasha Bustos, who just did the Fire and Ice book. She's taken us to the Justice League International days. And we've got Howard Porter, which I don't think we've announced where he's taken us yet. So I'm going to keep that up to myself. And then we've got Scott Collins doing Lobo. And it's just like, it is a wild book. And it's like, it was a big undertaking to get all those people organized. So like, kudos to DC and like all the thanks for them wanting to do something special for Keith.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
I also had on my notes that you wrote the one shot for Batman Face Clan crossover. I had to Google Face Clan when the book originally came out, and then once again when I was doing like research for this. They're like a gaming online group, I guess.
Yeah, they're like an esports team.
How does that come to your desk and you're like, yeah, I guess I'll write Face Clan? Like, did you get to talk to any of the guys or anything like that?
I actually did. I was on a call with a couple of the Phase members. I don't. They're the ones that are in the book. It's like I'm gonna blank right now on all their names, but they're really nice and enthusiastic, and they wanted like a big stuffed comic. Like they're like, we know we're asking for a lot, but we want like all the villains and we want a lot of the heroes, and we want us to be the heroes too. And so the whole thing is like they go into the digital realm, the internet, and they have to stop the Riddler from mind controlling everyone basically on Earth. And so it's like I just kind of wrote it like a little campy, a little bit like a Scooby-Doo team up, and because it's just like it's a little goofy, right? We have to acknowledge that like we're going into the internet, and so like that was a lot of fun to do, and they had a lot of merch. This was all part of like this weird collab they were doing. So they had a lot of Batman FaZe Clan stuff, and they sent me like a big box filled with like sweaters and jerseys and things like that. So sometimes if I'm at a convention or like a gaming event, I'll wear the jersey, and everyone's like, "You're in FaZe Clan?" Because it's like, and it's a really nice jersey. It has my name on it. So like, I don't know. I'm not an esports guy really, but like so many of my friends are. I could lean on them, and I was like, am I using the right word here? You know what I mean? I don't want to sound like grandpa or anything.
Play it up.
Well, I have a question about that actually. Well, my silly question is, who's the better trash talker, LeBron or FaZe Clan?
They talk trash to Batman, so I think it might be FaZe Clan actually.
Well, there you go.
They call him a dinosaur, I think. Yeah.
Is it how conscious of you writing Jaime is? He's probably like, I don't know, 18, 19 in the comic, I'm guessing. He's probably a young man.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult is it to write for a person younger and like not sound like you're trying to be, catering to, you're not
hello fellow kids.
Hello fellow kids,
I don't know how successful I am. It's up to I'll have to let the cool teens let me know. But like no one's
we can't help you with
me
that.
on it. It's not like oh gosh. I remember, how do I say this without being spicy? There's a book a long time, maybe like 10 years ago, where maybe a 13-year-old character is like, we're in the narration, and he's like, "Oh man, she's so beautiful in my class. She's like Tina Fey." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know if this 13-year-old would have a crush on Tina Fey. Like that's a little weird to me." So
anyway, it is funny to go back and read, some of those old, like especially old Stan Lee stories where
oh yeah,
Spider-Man's like the Beatles are cool, and it kind of weirdly dates that stuff. But
I try not to use a lot of current slang because I want the book to kind of like have some longevity to it. And I also don't do pop culture references if I can help it in Blue Beetle, just because we reference a lot of things, but it's stuff that's in the DC universe. It's not like they're not talking about going to Taylor Swift or something.
Yeah.
Well, you have that advantage because like
episode.
you have DC technology that can be all over the place, as opposed to if you do a movie in the real world with technology, those are the things that kind of date films now.
Yeah.
As you look at someone's phone and what they're using. But in the DC world, all the tech is so advanced that it doesn't matter.
I don't know. I think George Lopez can build anything.
I am curious what it's like when people talk about the Blue Beetle movie and they go, "But what if I want to read about it?" and they point directly to your book.
That's like it's a big honor, honestly. It's like, because we wanted that to happen, right? We wanted people who love the movie and want Blue Beetle to come in to Graduation Day or the ongoing. You can start with Blue Beetle #1 and without reading Graduation Day, but like I wanted to make it like new reader friendly, but also like with the Blood Scarab arc, we're kind of paying off stories that we haven't touched on in like I think 60 years for some of this stuff. Yeah. And so I want to reward the longtime fans and also show the people who are reading Blue Beetle for the first time that like this character's been around. He's important. Like he's got a legacy behind him, and I don't expect people to go back and read like old Steve Ditko Blue Beetles, but you should because they're wild and weird and fun. But like you can still have some fun, like seeing that like, oh yeah, Ted was his own hero. He has his own villains, he has his own damage, and Dan was the same way. And now Jaime is like dealing with all their problems too, in addition to his own.
Yeah. I think one thing we talked about, especially when the trailers for the movie came out, was like, which DC I think has a bit of a leg up on Marvel on this, and I don't know why Marvel's not taking as much advantage. They just put these are the books at the end of the trailer. These are the books that you can go read
Mhm.
right after you've seen the trailer. And I think in the trailer, I think you see the cover for Graduation Day #1, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's graduation day, and then it's the John Rogers, Keith Giffen
Yeah, and I was like,
collections.
it's that simple. Just put it at the end of the trailer. Show them, especially if it's a new series or a book that you're reprinting specifically for this, like it's right there. And some
Yeah,
people
and
do go into it.
And they put us in like Walmart and Target and stuff, which I never thought in a million years my book would be in a store like that. But like we were in main books. We were one of the top books for DC last year because the excitement around the movie and the character, but also us, us.
Yeah, of course.
Well, it's cool because it's a balance of like the movie is different than the book, but kind of essentially has a few things into it. But it's a great read. You get two great stories out of two different pieces.
Yeah,
of media.
and the director Angel Miguel Soto of the movie and the actor Jolo, who plays Jaime, they're big fans of the book too. Every time a new issue comes out, they'll retweet my stuff, or I get a DM from Jolo every so often. He's caught up on the book, which is so wild to me because he loves the character too. He wants to know what's going to happen next with Jaime because he might have to act in that story someday. Fingers crossed.
Oh, yeah.
There's these that you can find at your local Target. I don't know if they still have them, but that was pretty cool because you're just kind of walking around and they're like, oh, look, they give you a comic with the little action figure, like encouraging.
Yeah. That's so cool. I never thought in a million years like I could have an action figure connect, with the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's so cool. All right, Clay, you got anything else? I do have one more thing that I want to touch on, a little bit of Marvel work, or Kyle.
Yeah, I just I was looking at your credits and everything, and I guess it's kind of a slight two-part. Because I was a fan of the game, even though I can't play on my iPad anymore. What was it like working on the Guardians of the Galaxy Telltale game? And
I love it.
And two, can you talk about anything about, I guess, how you got involved with Gearbox? Because I have a few former students that actually work there. I'm curious about that.
So for Guardians of the Galaxy, that was my first video game gig, which is wild to think about. I was doing Adventure Time comics and Rick and Morty, I want to say. And so Telltale needed people who had could kind of fake voices, not like voice impressions, but like the dialogue and like how does Rocket speak versus Gamora versus whoever. And so I did that. And that was like really exciting because my background's comics. And in a comic, there's a small team, the writer, the artist, the editors, the letterer, everyone. And then and all the the marketing and the publishing people. So it's like 20 people at most maybe before it comes out. In a video game, hundreds of people are involved in this. So I make a joke for Star-Lord, and my boss has to like it, the director has to like it, the voice actor has to understand the joke so he can sell it. And if the voice actor doesn't like a joke, they kill it. You know what I mean? They'll just give a bad reading sometimes, and it's like, oh well, we're not going to use that. Never mind. And so all these steps of approval have to go through. That's why making games funny is so hard. Is because how many different steps you have to get.
Oh, yeah.
And so when the game comes out, people are like, that was so funny what Star-Lord said. Did you write that? And I'm like, not really. You know what I mean? 100 people wrote that joke. And so that's cool. It's a collaboration. I just try not to have an ego about my video game stuff because of that. And so for Gearbox, I've been there for a little over a year now.
Oh, so you've been working okay.
Yeah. And so I can't talk about the games I'm on yet because they haven't been announced. But the team has been so cool so far, and it's really exciting because they have a big writing team, and usually they kind of for these game studios they'll have you for a few months and then you're done. And this is a full time I'm in it to win it, and if they need help on this, I'm there. If they need help on that, they've got me. And so I love it.
So, and I guess you're working on more than one project with them, or?
Yeah, I'm on multiple projects. We'll leave it at that. But hopefully they're all announced by the end of the year, so I can stop being weirdly secretive about it. My brother doesn't even know what I'm working on. It's so funny.
Very cool. Very cool.
Nice.
Is that the person you want to surprise with some of your work? I guess that your brother, I guess, is a video game fan.
Yeah, like all my gamer friends really is kind of the big thing. Is like it's really cool. Like they're all a big supporter of my comic stuff, but like it's cool when they're like, oh yeah, I played Guardians of the Galaxy like 2 times because I wanted all the different stories.
Yeah,
and like that means a lot to me, and like that's like really exciting. Is when the people in my life like genuinely like what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I love that Guardians game. It is like one of my favorites because I'm a big Guardians fan, and I felt like you got the voice and tone, and then it did its own thing, and it was just so fun to play.
Yeah, it was really exciting. It was like a real trial by fire working on that game because I had no experience, and they're like, "Well, guess what? You're you're the lead writer on this one game right now. Episode 3, I want to say, is the one that I did the most work on."
Oh, okay.
That's the Drax one. Yeah.
And you worked with Netflix too?
Yeah, so it's more of like under the hood kind of work, but like basically they have all these like, the Black Mirror, Bandersnatch, or like whatever. And so they do these interactive TV shows and movies where you kind of choose your own adventure. And so like I have because of Telltale, I have a background of like keeping those things coherent and organized. So some of it would be looking at scripts that people were writing and being like, this would be better. This choice would be better if it was more like this. And then other things are like literally just like kind of coding and behind the scenes tech stuff. So I did that for a while, and that was really nice. They're a really nice team, and they've expanded their gaming stuff now. They have all these like game studios under their belt. So maybe someday I'll be back at Netflix. We'll see.
Nice. All right, we're getting very close to it, but I didn't want to end this without talking about Aaron Fisher, the Captain America Railway. So you co-created this character with Jan Basildua. I believe that's how you say her name. How did this one kind of come about?
No, Christopher Cantwell wrote the miniseries, the United States of Captain America, that this character appears in. And he had the idea of like introducing all these different caps, right? So like and they're all kind of from different kind of underprivileged groups. We have like a Native American Captain America, and we have like a Black woman Captain America, and we have like and Aaron Fisher, who's like the gay Captain America now. So it was cool because he only had like kind of like a nugget of an idea, and then beyond that, it was like he wanted to give each of us like as much runway as possible. And so it was like, do whatever you want, like make him your own character. And so for me, I wanted someone with a little more edge because we're, like I've written like Hulkling and Wiccan and like some of the other characters, but they don't have a lot of grit to them. You know what I mean? Like, and so I wanted to kind of give Marvel like a gay character that has like a lot of edge to him. So that was like the big thrill. And like, it must have been a slow news day because when he came out, he was everywhere for like 24 hours. He was in CNN and like Politico and TMZ. My mom called me and she's like, "Your comic's on TMZ," and I was like, "What?" And so like just stuff like that is like it's unreal. And so he'll always be my favorite Marvel character because he's mine. But Jan nailed the design. We went back and forth a few times on it, and like I see cosplayers do it at conventions because it's like that was something we were thinking about too. Is like he's kind of a DIY Captain America. Yeah. He doesn't have the superpowers in the beginning, and so we wanted a costume that looked like something anyone could kind of throw together, and people really stuck with it.
He's got a great haircut too. I wish.
He's got the.
I wish I could pull that off. Yeah, I love that. You can, if anybody's looking for this character, you can read a little bit on the Love Unlimited Infinite comics. On the
we do a 6-part with him. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, are those different to write than regular
They're different because of the Infinite comics. You scroll them instead of turn the page, and so there are things in comics that I love, like a turn page reveal. Like you turn the page and like something exciting happens. You can't do that in these comics. Right. You have to find other ways to kind of build up the tension and the surprise. And it's like such a learning experience because this is like a little more technical, but you know, in a comic, you have a set number of pages. In a normal comic, in an infinite comic, you have a set number of panels. And so you have to fit, it has to be within a certain amount of, because they want them to be a certain length, because they want something kind of quick that if you're on the subway or whatever, you can get it between stops. And so like they're meant to be kind of short, digestible comics that you can kind of just binge. And so like learning to write for that is something that like it's really tricky, but I love the challenge. I want to do a lot more of them. If not for Marvel, then for like Tapas or whatever.
Yeah, webtoons and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Also, while I was looking that up for the show, like I read the War of the Realms issue that you did, and I was like, wait a minute, Dagger speaks Spanish? Because when she saves someone, she asked them if they're okay, like in Spanish.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, Dagger speaks Spanish? I didn't know that.
It's you know, I don't actually know if it's canon now because I did it.
I mean, it happened.
It made sense to me. Like these Cloak and Dagger are really like they protect a lot. Like Aaron Fisher, they're very much like super street level, and they're like looking out for like homeless people and addicts and you know whoever. And like for them to like, I think it just makes sense for Cloak and Dagger to have like a little bit more multicultural vibes. And I just love those characters. That was such like a who wrote Ricardo Lopez Ortiz did the art on that, and I keep looking on his store to see if he's ever going to sell that Cloak and Dagger page because I want it in a heartbeat.
Nice. Yeah. All right. We're getting kind of to the end of it. Is there any last questions you guys want to ask? Okay.
I just have one. I mean, like, what's been your favorite fan interaction?
Oh gosh, the cosplayers are really exciting to me because you know I didn't like when I see the Aaron Fisher cosplay, that's like the really exciting one. But even the BlueBeetle one, because I know they track me down. Like if I'm at a convention, I have a table, and people will come to me. They're like, I dressed up like Jaime because of you, or I dressed up like Ted because of you, and like that's so weird to me. Like I love that, and so like please keep dressing up as characters I've written and find me. And it's like for BlueBeetle, you know. X-Men fandom is huge and there's like a million fans everywhere and like they're always but BlueBeetle's kind of like a more tight-knit family, so like all the diehards like I consider like friends, and I followed some of the cosplayers on Instagram and I'm just like I love your dog and things like that. So
nice. Yeah, especially because we got the legacy armor, so like if somebody already had a BlueBeetle cosplay, they could modify it or maybe make
that would be killer. That would be the best.
Yeah, you guys really nailed it with the like all that's like just the aesthetic changes that are kind of happening to Jaime, like they're really fun, and just to everyone on the book, like really fun to follow. So pretty excited for the future of the series. Is there anything else, Josh, you wanted to talk about? Anything you wanted to plug, mention, lead people to pick up your books?
No, I'm doing some conventions coming up. I'll be at AwesomeCon in Washington D.C. In 2 weeks, and then I'm in Emerald City Comic Con. I don't have a table; I'm just floating around in Emerald City. And then I'm doing WonderCon at the end of March, I think is when it is. So those are the next big ones for me. And just like you can follow me wherever at Lost His Keys Man. I lost my keys, man. That's my handle. And just keep your eyes open. I've got some really fun stuff coming out in June. It's it all hits at once, basically. So like when solicits come out, you'll be like, man, you were busy. It's like, no, I wrote that like a year ago. It just takes them this long to come out.
Cool. Well, if you ever want to come back and talk more about that,
yeah, anytime. Anytime.
This was a great time. I do have one last request, and this is something because I've always wanted to be a radio DJ, kind of. And you know the things whenever they'll have like a guest and they're like, my name is so and so, and you're listening to
this
radio station. So could you do one of yourself saying you are watching the Next Issue podcast?
Sure. Sorry. Hey, I'm Josh Trujillo, and you are listening to the Next Issues podcast.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes.
That's going in all the BlueBeetle reviews going forward. So, all right. Well, I want to thank everyone that submitted questions. If we didn't get to everything, hopefully, maybe Josh will get to some of those on Twitter for sure, and we'll definitely put out little bits of the stream as well on our shorts. So make sure to stay tuned for that. But to everyone on the comments, Leonard Kim, Terry, Final Neil, thank you guys for watching live. And I hope everyone enjoyed the show. We don't have any recommendations this week. Just go check out Josh's comics because they are truly amazing. Yeah, and especially because you can get them in Spanish, which is super cool. Like I've never bought.
Oh
the
yeah,
Spanish
we
one.
should definitely talk about that. Yeah, pick up the Spanish versions. Like, show DC that like you're interested in like
Yeah.
more of those.
Oh, that's cool.
I've been picking up the whole graduation day. I picked up both. I think my shop didn't get some of the Spanish ones for the new Blue Beetle, but I'm hunting those down because I think, like you said, it's important to show DC that people want that stuff in their comic books. So great. So yeah, thanks everyone, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
See ya.
Bye guys.